All right, it appears as though we are now recording, Todd. I will convene the Public Records Advisory Council today. It's August 14th. It is 3:01 p.m. And it appears as though we have more people coming in. Just a quick look at the agenda, folks. Make sure we're all in line with what we have. We will first approve the agenda, but we don't have a very long agenda here. We'll be getting a presentation from Yufeng on the results of the 360 review for Todd. We will then have a discussion of the review of the results and determine our next steps regarding the reappointment of Todd as the public records advocate. I note in our agenda that we do not have an agenda item for public input. And so as the chair of the council, I would like to modify the agenda accordingly so that we can give members of the public an opportunity to address the PRAC, and then we will conclude our meeting. Are there any other additions or questions regarding the agenda today? Okay, hearing none at this time. Shasta, you just popped up. You have anything to add or? Okay, very good. Then we will begin with Yufeng. Yufeng, I assume, yeah, there you are. Welcome, Yufeng. Nice to see you, and thank you for all your hard work. I know you've been busy with this, and I imagine you're going to want to take over the screen and show us a whole bunch of fancy pie charts and things of that nature. So why don't you go ahead and take it away, Yufeng. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just go ahead and share screen and start my slideshow. So a version of this, the final version was sent out to members of the PRAC and has also been posted on our website. Please note that there's two documents. One is this presentation itself, Public Records Advocate Executive Director Review, and the second is a PDF that contains the complete comments that were provided by our evaluators. So, this PowerPoint is a summary of the results that I've received. Just a, I guess, reminder for those who may not have attended. I know we have many members of the public as well. The PRAC asked that a executive director review process be conducted by myself, the deputy public records advocate, and that has since been completed. Let me just go through quickly. The survey itself was open from July 18th to August 12th. The total number of completed surveys that I received were 20. Of the evaluator categories, of which there are 6, I've noted how many evaluators we sent out requests for completed surveys from and how many responses we received containing kind of an evaluator self-identification for what category of evaluator they are. So here's a breakdown of those who responded. The categories are direct report, which we received 1 response. The second category is voting or non-voting members of the PRAC, which basically consists of members of the PRAC for the past 2 years, and we received 5 responses from that category. Of the members of the public who have received assistance, we received 1 completed survey response. From employees of state or local entities that have received assistance directly from Todd, we received 10 responses. Members of the media or representatives of a media outlet, we received 3 responses, and employees of a state or local entity that have received training, we received 4. And you will note that the numbers here add up to greater than 20. I will point out that the reason for that is that we had some overlap between evaluators who identified themselves as employees of a state or local entity that has received assistance and employees of a state or local entity that have received training. Okay. The first question was directly related to PRAC members, of which we had 5 respondents. The first sub-question there asked, well, how well has the advocate worked with the PRAC to carry out the statutory responsibilities of the Office of the Public Records Advocate? The array of responses is here with unacceptable, acceptable, effective, very effective, and no opportunity to observe being the options. Of those options, we had 0 unacceptable, 1 responding as acceptable, 1 responding as effective, 3 as very effective, and 0 responding no opportunity to observe.
Fantastic.
The second sub-question, just for PRAC members, was whether the advocate has been prepared for meetings of the PRAC. The breakdown is as shown here, with 3 remarking effective, 2 remarking very effective, and the remaining categories being 0. The third specific question for PRAC members was, how has the advocate been responsive to questions and concerns from individual members, as well as questions from the full PRAC? And the breakdown is 2 responding as effective, 3 responding as very effective, and the remaining categories responding 0. And please stop me if I'm doing going too quickly or if I'm going too slowly, but I just wanted to make sure to present the information as clearly as I can. Okay, so the second, and I see with that Rep. Anderson has his hand raised.
Yes, I do. I'm just curious as to how many members are there on PRAC? You got 5 responses. How many members, are there?
Well, I sent out 15 requests, 15 distinct individuals.
Good. Who are on PRAC or have been on PRAC?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the second question is a general question for all categories of respondents. This individual promotes a customer service centered organization. And the breakdown of responses was 3 responding as acceptable, 3 responding as effective, 13 responding as very effective, and 1 responding with no opportunity to observe. Third question, this individual collaboratively manages the resources they are entrusted with to achieve the best possible outcomes for Oregonians. The responses were 2 responding as acceptable, 5 responding as effective, 8 responding with very effective, and 5 responding with no opportunity to observe. Fourth question, this individual embraces and leads through change. We have the following array of answers: 1 responding as unacceptable, 2 responding as acceptable, 1 responding with effective, 6 responding with very effective, and 10 responding with no opportunity to observe. The fifth question, this individual creates and fosters an environment where everyone has access to public records information. The responses are as follows, with 2 responding unacceptable, 1 responding 1 responding acceptable, 6 responding effective, 10 responding with very effective, and 1 responding with no opportunity to observe. And I will note that there is a category of for comments that elaborate on responses that I'll go into towards the end of this presentation. So if you can hold your questions about that, that is when we will discuss that. Okay, so 6 is this individual owns and takes responsibility for quality of outcomes for Oregonians. Responses were 1 responding as unacceptable, 1 responding acceptable, 2 responding effective, 11 responding with very effective, and 5 responding with no opportunity to observe. 7, this individual provides dispute resolution services at the request of government bodies or public records requesters. The responses were as follows: 3 responding with acceptable, 1 responding with effective, 8 responding as very effective, and 8 responding as no opportunity to observe. 8. This individual provides training on public records laws and best practices. The responses were as follows: 1 responding with acceptable, 2 responding with effective, 13 responding with very effective, and 4 responding with no opportunity to observe. 9, this individual provides guidance and advice on the public records law upon request. The responses are as follows: 2 responding acceptable, 4 responding with effective, 14 responding with very effective, and the remaining categories responding 0 respondents. 10, this individual operates with urgency, transparency, and accountability. The responses were as follows: 2 responding acceptable, 6 responding with effective, and 12 responding with very effective. Number 11, this individual is honest and transparent regardless of the situation. The responses are as follows: 2 responding with acceptable, 3 responding with effective, 14 responding with very effective, and 1 responding with no opportunity to observe. 12, this individual is consistent in communicating to their own agency what is happening at the PRAC. The responses were as follows: 1 responding acceptable, 2 responding effective, 2 responding very effective, and 15 responding with no opportunity to observe. 13, this individual regularly shares what is happening within their agency. The responses are as follows, with 2 responding acceptable, 2 responding effective, 3 responding very effective, and 13 responding no opportunity to observe. 14, this individual builds diversity, equity, and inclusion organizational capacity. The responses are as follows, with 1 responding effective, 3 responding very effective, and 16 responding with no opportunity to observe. 15, this individual fosters and promotes inclusive environment. Responses are as follows, with 3 responding effective, 4 responding very effective, and 13 responding no opportunity to observe. Finally, we get to the written comments section. Please note that 16, 17, and 18 all call for written commentary, and that is provided in full in the second document that's been made available to the PRAC and posted online, which is entitled Director Review Complete Comments. The comments that are included in these slides are a brief summary of what's been provided in the complete comments. 16 asks, what are some leadership strengths you've observed in this individual? And the comments include helpful, knowledgeable, and transparent, engaging, open, and communicative, provides good advice and direction, good at delegating work and letting people know when he does so, demonstrates professionalism and emphasizes respect for all participants in the public records process, and responsive and presents information clearly. 17 asks, what are some leadership opportunities for growth in this individual? And some of the highlight comments are, in summary, would benefit from understanding the legislative process better, could demonstrate better advocacy and approach the role more as an auditor, and could report on information that would help the council see where the trouble spots are and if there are any bad actors. Continues to progress in his leadership role and grows as legislation and statutes grow, and could improve trainings by giving more specific trainings to different entities based on the types of records they hold. 18 is just a space that's allotted for additional comments. Some highlights in summary include, I think Mr. Albert is a fantastic advocate for both the public / requesters and public agencies. I know my agency has benefited greatly from the advocate's office and has deepened my commitment to government transparency and accountability. Sometimes I find the analysis of certain aspects of the Oregon Public Records Law either unhelpful or an adoption of a public body view slanted towards non-disclosure that may or may not be consistent with the Oregon Public Records Law. I would like to see the office become more involved in promoting transparency. And finally, I find Mr. Albert to be an excellent public servant who has successfully stabilized an office that's seen better days. He is engaging with the public and is well prepared, and he works diligently and professionally. And with that, that concludes the presentation summary of the evaluations we received. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Yufeng. I would ask if the members of the council, if you have any questions of Yufeng, please. Representative Anderson, I see your hand is still up. I'm just wondering if that's a legacy hand. Yes, okay. Are there any questions? Michael, yes, please.
Hi, I just want to see if I'm understanding the numbers right. And I think before that I do that, I should offer the mea culpa that I am one of the many or one of the PRAC members who neglected to timely return the survey. I did not get pay quite enough attention, I guess, to when you were expecting it back. But as I understand the numbers, it looks to me like, kind of setting aside the PRAC membership's responses, the numbers that you're sharing with us reflected input from about 15 government representatives and about 3 members of the press and maybe one requester. Is that right?
Let me give you the precise breakdown here. So besides the 5 respondents from the PRAC, we have 1 direct report. We have 1 member of the public who received assistance. We have 10 state and local public employees, 3 members of 3 media representatives and Society of Professional Journalists, those folks. And there's some blending between public bodies that have received training and state and local employees. I think the final number for that hovers around 12, I think.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I understood those numbers. Is there have we looked at whether we can sort of isolate sort of different responses from those different groups? Is there any analysis of like the perspective of the various stakeholder groups, or is it all just kind of put together? I mean, they're pretty small sample sizes, so.
I think I understand your question to ask is if, well, if you look at the survey sheet, right, we can correlate, what category of requester that particular respondent self-identified as, and their particular comments and the way that they've responded. So we can do that. It's just that for the purposes of this particular report, it's de-individualized and aggregatized. But if the PRAC wants to have some kind of trend analysis of the specific categories of requesters, I think that can be done.
Well, this one, I mean, one of the comments that you read towards the end there from the sort of free answer part got me a little bit concerned and curious about whether the PRAC or the advocate is really viewed the same way from all perspectives, which I think is important in the role that both public bodies and the requester community sort of view the advocate with the same degree of respect and confidence in their neutrality and stuff. So I do think it might be useful to see how those numbers break down. Although again, I'm not sure you have enough of a sample size to really draw any conclusions all that confidently anyway.
Other questions? Shasta.
I think Representative Anderson had put his hand back up, or no?
No, it's I'm considering it a legacy hand there, Shasta. Okay. You're up.
Thought he put it down and then put it back up. All right, so yeah, I mean, I would echo Michael Crone. When I was on Open Oregon, we kind of had really a dichotomous view, like you're either a requester or you're a provider of records. There's rarely overlap between the two. So maybe the Venn diagram isn't quite as, narrow as we think it might be if we divide it into those kind of categories to look a little deeper at the responses. And then I also heard some feedback from some people about the survey not being anonymous, and that being tough to square when you're relying on this government service. So.
Yeah, I think just to, I guess, address the anonymity portion of it, I think my understanding of our previous discussions was that it would be anonymous in the sense that when I give my presentation to the PRAC, you, the individual PRAC members, and Todd, as the advocate, would not know the identities of the individuals who are giving the feedback. That said, when they submit the form to me, it is clearly from their personal email, so that information is there. It's information that I know, right? And it's information that I think, especially in the context of public records, right? While there are possible exemptions that could be claimed for it, right? There is identifying information that is from those folks who have submitted evaluations.
Yes, Representative Anderson.
Thank you. You're right. I don't know how to turn my hand off. I thought I did. I want to follow up a little bit on Michael's question. So there were, on a number of the ones, there would be one unacceptable. Is there some way you can say that person who gave unacceptable in one category is the same person who gave unacceptable in the other categories? Or would they be three different people? I'll leave it there, and then I have a follow-up question.
Yes. Yes, I think what you're asking is, we have, let's say, 3 separate questions. Each one has an unacceptable. Can we isolate and see, well, was one person saying unacceptable for all 3 questions, right? Or is it 3 different people, right? And the answer is yes. We can pin down with that level of specificity. It's one sheet that contains all questions, 1 to 16. So we can identify whether it was a single individual who had a particular set of responses.
But my question is, did you?
No.
Okay. Then the follow-up question is, let's say one particular area, let's just use the public media. You said there were 3 to 5. And so in some area, would the public media vote as a block? If there were 5 that said he was effective or 5 that said he was hyper effective or whatever the top, could you isolate that too? In other
I
words, what I'm
can.
trying to get at is there a certain segment of either the PRAC or the various stakeholders in this that all have the same feeling one way or the other?
Yes, I can do that. Though I have not
But
done
if you
that
can,
yet.
okay, and to me, I don't know that it's that important. I'm just trying to, because I'm looking at the overall trends. I would say that if, and Mark's nodding his head there, but I would say if there's one segment that is consistently in one end, that would be an area for improvement. He's not been effective enough in communicating with the media or with other state agencies that he interacts with. But we can't tell that, and I don't really think it's necessary given the high ratings that are generally, effective, very effective. You know, that's across the board.
Short answer is yes, that can be done upon request.
I'm not requesting.
Thank you for the clarification, Representative. Other questions, please? Well, folks, we have our information. It does not look to me at this point as though there are any follow-up requests of you, Fang, to do additional research into the responses that have been submitted at this point. So, Scott, I'm going to look over to you here because you were the chair of the hiring bylaw subcommittee, for lack of a perhaps more formal designation. At
Mark,
this
I don't
point,
know if you caught that Brent had his hand up.
yeah, I know. I'm putting Scott on the under the spotlight here. Sorry, Shasta. Scott, do you recall what the next step after reviewing the 360 review is? I'm sorry, I probably should have warned you in advance that I might lean on you a little bit regarding the process here.
No, not a problem. I thought that the question might come to this point. The process we adopted as a council earlier this year was to receive the PRAC review, the 360 review, which we have now done. And now the PRAC is to decide whether we want to recruit or appoint a PRA. So we've gotten the feedback on our current public records advocate, and now the council needs to consider if we're finding that acceptable enough to perhaps offer a new term to our current PRA, or if we want to go out and do a recruitment process, which could include the current PRA and external candidates. So I think we're at a decision point in terms of new term recruiting or new term working with DAS HR to set up a new term with our current PRA. That's what the outline that we adopted earlier this year suggested. And now I see Brent's hand is raised.
Yeah, go ahead, Brent, please.
Thanks, Mark. I do have a question and I appreciate Scott's answers. If we were to ask for this breakdown, even though it's not been done, it could be done. We've had 3 people now ask if it's possible. How long would it take? How long would it take for us to find out how is it 3 members of the media? Is that what the number was out of the 15?
So the specific ask would be of the 3 members or of all, the 3 members of the media, what trend in their answers were across the board? Or more pointedly, were there any unacceptables or low scoring range answers among those 3? Is that the ask?
Yeah, yes, in effect. I'm making notes here. It sounds like there's 15, right? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but there were 10 government and 3 media. Okay, and I understand that there might be overlap. How long would that take?
If you give me half an hour, I can do that
right. I'm just curious because a lot of people have asked this question. We seem to be speeding along. I'm wondering whether would be worth just trying to answer that for people. And I'm just kind of throwing that out there.
Nick, I don't think you're not a member of the council, and so you would be available for public comments at the end of the meeting. Michael, you're or forgive me, and I'm not familiar with Danelle Morvan. Forgive me. I don't believe you are a member of the PRAC, and I apologize if I didn't make this clear at the beginning. This is a meeting of the council at this time. We will have time for public comment towards the end. So the next hand that I see up, Michael, please.
Thanks. I just really wanted to clarify that, you know, I think the only reason people are asking these questions and the reason why I started asking them is just because the sample size of the press is so small that it's possible that like all of the lowest votes we saw came from one angle. Like, I'm not really concerned if there's one person that had a bad experience and like felt that they wanted to respond to this survey just so they could, like, you know, I mean, we've all had unsatisfied constituents in our roles, but I think what we're looking for is just some degree of confidence that there's not that there's not one of our important stakeholder groups that's consistently feeling disappointed, and if there is, then I think that's something to know and to work on. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I think I will take the privilege of the chair here, although I don't get much privilege. Well, before I do so, I'm going to go to Shasta, please. And Nick, would you mind lowering your hand? I apologize. Go ahead, Shasta.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I would make a motion that we ask the deputy to make that breakdown, and I would also include the public requester. It sounds like there was also one public requester included in that group.
Yeah, I would agree to second that motion unless there are any additional modifications to that.
Mark?
Yeah,
Chair,
Scott,
I
go
don't
ahead.
I don't have a modification to the motion. I just want to throw out there, it's mid-August, and I totally support getting more information, and I appreciate you, Feng, offering that breakdown for us. Just want to keep the council aware of the timelines. The contract expires the end of September, right? September 30. So just be aware of the timeline. Another meeting means that perhaps any actions after that will be potentially delayed, but just want to throw that out.
Well, I will tell you, it's my intention to make a motion at some point to reappoint Todd, but I do want to make sure that everybody has the necessary information before they are required to make a vote on this publicly. So you, Fang, if I may, there is a motion on the table, and I'd like a discussion about that. You, Fang, there does seem to be some interest in seeing whether there's a pattern of dissatisfaction amongst certain segment of the stakeholders. And so I gather at this point, there is a motion on the table. Yufeng, are you clear what that motion was?
I do want some clarity here. Are we looking for a by the question breakdown for each category of evaluator? Or is it sufficient to say, for example, member of the media or representative of a media outlet, 75% of responses were effective or very effective, 25% of responses were acceptable or unacceptable? Or do you want a greater level of specificity?
I think that would work for, like, if you just did a version of the report that you presented now with just those 4 respondents. And again, I don't really know that there's any reason to think they were they were grouped like that, there's just that possibility given the small number of respondents we got from those groups. And if you can, if we want to I would be all in favor of letting Yufeng do it in half an hour and coming back to this if that's
Indeed.
possible.
Indeed. Okay, so there is a motion on the table. Is there, if I may, Yufeng, we're hoping you can do this really super quickly. Sorry to put you under the stopwatch, if you will, but there is a motion on the table, and is there further discussion? Hearing or seeing none at this point, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, Yufeng, we're going to ask you to do a quick review of that. Folks, I don't know how we want to spend our time between now and getting this report back from Yufeng. This is, I'm hoping Rep. Anderson has a solution here. Yes, sir, please go ahead.
I spend a whole lot of my time in Zoom meetings, and I spend a whole lot of my time with my screen shut off because I'm doing something else. So usually it's eating, and that's horrible to look at in these things. But my suggestion is we all just turn our screens off. We're all in places where we can spend some time on something else. And then when Yufeng is done, you can just come on and call us back to order.
Well, there is another option here as well. And one of those options would be for us to take any public comment at this time as well, which might save us a little time and get two birds in one nest, so to speak. So perhaps if I'm seeing some thumbs up, so that seems to be a proper course at this point.
Good.
So if I may readjust the agenda to permit the members of the public to address the council, I think that might be a good way to solve our little conundrum here. So if you are a member of the public and would like to address the council, please raise your hand. And depending, we try to like to keep comments limited to about 2 minutes. But seeing as though we've made, well, depending on the desire of the public to address us, we'll be a little bit more generous on time. So Mr. Budnick, I see your hand up. Please go right ahead and please introduce yourself. Although you don't probably need much of an introduction. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Mark. I am a board member with the Society of Professional Journalists of Oregon, and have I was involved in the SB 106 work group, as was Mark, and I'm sure others who I'm not thinking of. But I just want to say first, I apologize. I neglected to respond to the 360 review in a timely manner. I looked at it literally, I think, the day after the deadline ended. But as I tried to see how the office has been doing, I went to the resources page and did not see any sort of annual reports or metrics posted since I want to say 2020. And I guess and I did not see any, news stories updated since June of 2021. I guess I'm curious to what extent is the PRAC as an oversight committee tracking metrics like trainings of government, how many people trained, surveys from people in those trainings of non-government people in the public, what have been the surveys on those, consultations and alternative dispute resolution. I recall that when the Advocate's Office was set up, the intent of the office was in part to address this issue of problematic or disruptive situations caused by records requests or individual requesters through the process of alternative dispute resolution. I wonder to what extent that has happened, and how that process is working and whether it's working as intended. And I guess just the PrAC was set up very intentionally to be an oversight body. So I guess I'm curious if someone on the PrAC or someone can provide those metrics, or maybe you've already been briefed on them, but I don't see them anywhere. That's it.
Yeah,
And I know
Nick,
IQ answered questions. I'm not. Yeah.
No, these are all fair questions, and I do appreciate you raising some of them, and it has not gone unnoticed by me that we, as a PrAC, have, as mentioned in actually one of the comments, as you know, Nick, struggled rather mightily for the first about 3 years of the PrAC due to changes at the leadership level and going through a failed hiring process, and then ultimately hiring Mr. Albert. Since that time, we have conducted several meetings. Most of those meetings, frankly, have been focused on legislative issues related to fees for public records, and I know that you've been following those. However, during our regular course meetings, which we've had probably, I think we're statutorily required to meet twice a year, and during those meetings, Mr. Albert, and this is my recollection, has reported on the number of public trainings and the number of mediation cases that he and his deputy director have undertaken. Having said that, though, I would also say that we as a council have also recognized that we have been operating for nearly 7 years without a set of bylaws that cover the operation duties of the advocate himself, as well as the council. And as a result of that, we did form a subcommittee for the hiring of the advocate, and it is the chair's intention to resume the bylaw committee to put together bylaws for the conduct of the advocate, as well as other, basic rules that will guide the advocate as well as the council. That's a long way of saying, Nick, there's still an awful lot of work that we have, basic work that this council has to undertake to get our feet fully underneath us. And in part, I take responsibility in part for that, but I'll be very frank with you that much of the work of the council for the last 2 years has been centered on the fee issue, as you are keenly aware, and that has really taken a lot of the oxygen, if you will, out of the room. Nevertheless, there is an expectation of the council that the advocate report on his public trainings and mediation efforts, which again, under my recollection, he does regularly. I would be happy for other members of the council to respond if they feel necessary. Go ahead, Nick, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wasn't, and I apologize, I wasn't trying to engage in conversations. I know that that's not appropriate for me to start asking questions. I was sharing the questions, the spirit of you all to consider. I didn't mean to engage in a back and forth. And I guess for me though, as a member of the public, if I'm trying to gauge how the office is doing, I'm going to be looking to your resource page and looking for annual reports so I can see how is this office doing, what is it doing, what services does it, and the resource page appears to have not been updated for quite some time, and so I don't have that information.
No, and Nick, I don't. These are all valid questions, and I'm happy to engage in a discussion about it. If that wasn't your intention, I'd still like to engage in that discussion, because we, as I have said, have been flying around with a lot of, frankly, without much guidance as to what we should and shouldn't be doing, and the guidance for the advocate as well. And I have had a personal conversation with the advocate in full transparency, saying that it's my hope that we can get back to the basics after this hiring process in establishing council rules, expectations. My further understanding is that the PRAC and Todd can probably chime in. I do believe that we are required to submit a report once a year or once every biennium. Todd, I'd look to you for clarification on that. Nick, I can't tell you what has and has not been posted. Frankly, I don't look except for the agendas and the meeting materials. So, I cannot address that myself, but I'd welcome any other member of the PRAC to address Mr. Budnick and his questions.
Mark, if I might just say something real quick.
Please,
sorry to jump.
Please, no, go ahead, Scott.
I also thank Nick for bringing up the things about the website content. And I might suggest that the council defer that observation to the public records advocate to do what you were just saying, and maybe provide feedback. And a future agenda could include with Todd's biannual or annual report a refresh of the website, which I know is a state creature, is a creature of DAS perhaps, and not always locally controlled by every agency. But I do just thank Nick for your comments and ask Todd perhaps to respond, perhaps in more full accounting in a future meeting.
Thank you.
You're muted, Mark.
Nick, I'm sorry. Thank you for your input. I very much appreciate your engagement. Nick, did you have a follow-up?
No, we're good. Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay. Ms. Morvan, I see that your camera is on. Did you want to address the council?
Well, Yufeng's no longer here, but I did want to say a big thank you to her for the work that she's done. And I think most people have already said what I was going to say at this point, but just wanted to, follow up on the request for demographics on the respondents, and some curiosity around how many people actually responded out of those who were asked, like how are these people even selected to participate? And just, I guess, some curiosity around, whether or not there was any conversation around how many respondents were needed for the, survey to be considered credible. So I was happy to see that so many people who did responded so well. They were having, a really great experience. But I want to make sure that that if this is being relied upon for like decision making, just that it is representative of all the people who have interacted with, the public records advocate this year, myself being one of them. So that's all I was going to say.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Morvan, I would just remind everybody, this was our first voyage on a 360 review. And I will say, and I think that some of you who are familiar with the discussion, we did take a sample that is used by the state for this review. And my personal opinion of the review questions, sort of like fitting a square peg into a round hole. And I do think that at a future date, this council will need to re-examine those questions. I also agree with you, Ms. Morvan, that we probably need to look at a larger sample size of various stakeholder groups to hopefully get a more accurate reflection of all those stakeholders and their opinions. I do recognize a couple of the shortcomings that we are facing this time around, and hopefully the future members of this council will take note and improve upon the process and questions next time around. That's not to excuse those shortcomings, but we are all learning as we go here, and I hope you'll understand that, at least from the chair's perspective. Other comments?
Could I just say something real quick, Mark?
Please,
Which is,
please, Michael, please.
I just want to add, from my perspective, it's really great to hear from a member of the public who's here and had a great experience with Yufeng. So thank you for showing up and sharing that.
I couldn't agree more, Michael. I wish we would get a few more folks who share with us their comments, because we don't get that as often perhaps as we need to. Any other thoughts, comments by members of the public at this time? Well, I'm not hearing any, so I think what we will do at this point is follow Representative Anderson's suggestion, and hopefully we'll get Yufeng back on here. So what I will do, unless somebody has a brighter idea at this point, we can probably take a pause until Yufeng is able to rejoin. Any suggestions at this point? Not seeing anybody.
Mark?
Although I only get half of you. I have to look at my other screen. No, the other screen is empty. Go ahead. I see Shasta and then Scott. Shasta, please.
I had a question for Scott, which was, how long is this contract?
I believe, good question. My understanding is that terms are 4 years. Yep.
4 years. Okay.
And that commence October 1, assuming it's in place by October 1. And my question is going to be, I'm all for taking a break and turning the camera off. I want to make sure that we don't lose a quorum. So of the council members, does anybody have a hard out time that we would?
I have a hard stop at 4.
4.
Okay.
This is Andrea. Sorry.
Miss Morvan, please.
Okay, and one last thing was, when Yufeng presented the results for the long responses, those were less about the individual that we were discussing and more about the process as a whole. So like, a tendency towards non-disclosure. And I guess I was curious, do people generally have a space to talk about the process as a whole, or, a survey experience for that? Or, were there people who maybe were using this experience as a means to discuss their overall general experience with the group? And I guess for those sorts of responses that are about the process in general, is there anything that can be taken from that could be still useful, even though it's not quite appropriate for the 3 group?
Boy, I don't even know how to respond to that one, Miss Morvan. Well, I guess, first of all, there is somebody typing, and if you could mute, that would be helpful. Ms. Morvan, I don't necessarily have probably an adequate response to that at this point, in all seriousness. But I hope you will continue to engage this council and raise issues. We are more than willing to listen and take into account your suggestions and recommendations. And I guess I hope that that's a satisfactory response, at least at this time. But we welcome your participation and other members of the public, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. Anybody else at this point? All right. Well, we have apparently 5 minutes left. We're hoping that Yufeng will be able to provide the responses. It will probably be my intention to schedule another meeting, and at that meeting, depending on the results of Yufeng's responses, as I have shared with you previously, it would be my intention to move Mr. Albert for another 4-year term. If we run out of time today, we will, oh, well, look, who's back?
Hello.
Yufeng, I will put myself on mute and allow you to present your findings. Thank you.
Okay, so please forgive me if there are slight mathematical deviations, but let me go ahead and share my, can I share my screen on this? Yes, let me go ahead and share my screen. This doesn't look pretty, sorry. So basically the methodology here is I went through and opened all 20 of the individual responses, and I logged every unacceptable, acceptable, effective, and very effective, so denoted by an X. For each category, this is the breakdown for voting and non-voting members of the PRAC, of which there were 5 respondents. About 5% of the responses were unacceptable, 12% acceptable, and 82% were effective or very effective. Of the one member of the public who did respond, they did not have any unacceptable or acceptable responses. Their responses were predominantly effective or very effective, or no opportunity to observe. For employee of a state or local public entity that has received assistance, there were 0% that marked unacceptable. About 9% of those answers were acceptable, and 90% were effective or very effective. For member of the media or representative of a media outlet, roughly 4% of all responses was unacceptable, 24% acceptable, and 72% effective or very effective. For the purposes of this really roughshod calculation, I'd lump together employee of a state or local public entity and employee of a public body who's received training from the advocate. I hope that was as requested and satisfactory.
Very quick
Make
work.
your motion, Mark. Make your motion so we can get out of here by the hard stop.
Any questions, Representative? I'm on track here, but I just want to be sure everybody has an opportunity to respond. Michael, was that the information you were looking for?
That was a thumbs up from me, Mark. It looks to me like the answers were pretty evenly distributed, and that was good to see.
Yeah, thank you. I do see Andrea's hand up. Andrea, please. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, not. I feel like I'm throwing a monkey wrench in this now, but should we be concerned about the amount of responses that are like didn't have an opportunity to observe? Because I feel like that's a gap, but I don't know how to fix that. I'm just throwing a problem out there.
Yeah, Andrea, I think I got stood up on one of those questions and responded. I can't observe how he promotes diversity and equity in his agency. Go ahead, Yufeng. I see your hand up.
So I think this would be responsive to Andrea and Leela from DEQ's public comment about the process. So all of these individuals, notwithstanding the PRAC, are folks who have reached out to the Office of the Public Records Advocate, specifically to Todd. We track that, right? There's a document that tracks every time that happens. And so for the purposes of the survey, by random selection on that survey, I picked individuals who who worked with Todd. I used a random number generator. And the only time that there would be a switch would be if it said literally extremely limited contact, only to, like, maybe Todd said, you're at the wrong agency, go to somewhere else, would be the only time that a different random number would be picked to kind of sub in. So that's how we picked the 15 discrete individuals who are members of the public and the 15 discrete public records custodians, right? So that's kind of a note on methodology. So sometimes there are folks through that process who just don't have the ability to observe some of these questions that are being asked. I think that might be a sample size question. If this was expanded to perhaps beyond the parameters of the purposes of the appointment or hiring process, that would change things. But the process that that the PRAC deliberated on and finally approved kind of took into consideration, well, how big of a scope do we want this review to encompass?
All right, folks, any additional questions at this time?
Well, I would maybe add that I think a lot of these are related to the comment Ms. Morvan made and that you noted earlier, Mark, which is we may have some questions that we want to change going forward. And I think, and maybe some groups should get some questions and different groups should get different questions, and that would work a little better. Given the nature of the questions and the fact that they went to all these different groups, the number of no opportunity to observe answers didn't really surprise me.
I agree, Michael. Thank you. All right, folks, I'm prepared to make a motion at this time. I would move that we offer Todd a new term. I should say, let me rephrase. I would move that we offer Mr. Albert another 4-year term as the public records advocate for the state of Oregon.
Second.
I second that.
All right. Discussion. Thank you for the second, Representative Anderson.
Mark?
Go ahead, Scott.
No objections to the motion. Just a point of clarification that assuming the motion is carried, do we need to provide any direction for DAS HR to be involved in setting anything up with a new term, or is that just sort of implied?
I'm going to look to Andrea on this one. Andrea?
I'm not an HR expert, but
No.
I don't know if I can answer that question right now.
I'm Scott. I guess here's the answer I'll give you. That'll be between the advocate and DAS. We'll get that figured out. Okay. Any other? Go ahead,
Mark. Mark, I had a momentary panic. Am I a voting member of this, or I'm just ex officio?
You're ex officio, Representative. Thank you.
Then I would withdraw my second and ask the other person who seconded, because if I'm ex officio, I'm not a voting member.
Okay.
Yeah, I seconded. This is Will.
Okay, thank you, Will. All right. Further discussion.
Just on this question,
Go ahead,
can my understanding is the contract we have until the end of September, is that correct? So I'm wondering if we can, I mean, it seems a little weird to vote without knowing the answer to that, but on the other hand, maybe we could meet in September and do whatever follow-up might be necessary.
I'll leave that to Yufeng and Todd to determine whether or not we need a follow-up meeting, if that's acceptable, Michael.
Yeah, that seems fine. I will say that I plan to vote for this as well. I am a little bit concerned with some of the things that I've heard today. I think some of it reflects that we could do better as the PRAC of making sure that what's happening in the advocate's office is like visible to the public and that we have good insight into it.
Yep.
But overall, I plan to vote for the
I do
motion.
note that the Cameron Miles, who has a long history with these issues, although he's not a member of the council, I think we all know Cameron's role. Go ahead, Cameron, please.
I just wanted to point out, this is not a contract, it's a 4-year appointment. So it's just a standard appointment. It's not a contract at all.
Thank you for that clarification, Cameron. Appreciate it. So I will restate the motion and we'll do it again just so that we have the proper folks. So I'll move to appoint Mr. Albert as the public records advocate for a new term beginning in October, I believe is the proper timing of this, for a 4-year period.
Seconded.
Seconded by Will. Thank you. All right, folks. Any further discussion? All those in favor, and I would ask that we do a roll call on this, please. So Yufeng, I'm going to ask that you take a roll call of the members, or Todd. I'm sorry, I don't know who has the list of all the voting members of the PRAC, but I would like this one to be on the record, please.
This is an interesting situation because Todd is executive director, but this vote is also about him and he could delegate to me, but Todd?
I'm also a voting member. However, I will be abstaining from this vote, and I delegate this roll call to Yufeng with gratitude. And Yufeng, do you need the list, or are you good?
Is it just everybody that I sent the email out to?
Yeah.
Except for the representative and the senator?
Correct.
Okay.
And of those present, of course. Well, I guess, I don't know if go through the list or just go through those present.
I'm going to go through the list because I don't know who all is present. Okay. Mark Landauer.
Mark votes aye.
Okay. Shasta Moore.
Shasta Kearns Moore votes aye.
Sorry.
Okay.
PK Runkles.
So Yufeng, I'm representing the secretary. This is Stephanie Clark, and I vote aye.
Michael Cron.
I vote aye.
Andrea Chiapella.
Vote aye.
Steve Swo. I think Steve is out. I think Steve is absent, right? Brent Walth.
Aye.
Scott Stauffer.
Aye.
Will Glasson.
Aye.
Emily Gothard. Is not present. Tony Hernandez. Is not present. Todd Albert.
Jane.
I believe that's everyone.
I believe that's a majority of the members of a quorum. And so congratulations, Mr. Albert, for a new term as Oregon's public records advocate. We very much appreciate your work, and needless to say, much more work to be done. I'm going to be checking the agenda one more time to make sure we have done what we are supposed to do. We do not have a meeting scheduled at this time. I think that what we will do, go ahead, Todd, please.
Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to jump on at the end of what you were saying. We had agreed to an annual meeting, which should occur around October, November. To Shasta's message earlier, there is a biennial report due in December. It's actually, just to remind you guys, it's the PRAC's report, not the PRA's, specific to statute. And so usually members of the PRAC, under Mark's direction, 1 or 2 agree to write it. And I'm happy to help in any way I can with that, although it usually is leadership who writes that report. And then I send it to the legislature as per the statutory guidance. And so after this meeting, obviously depending on what happened here today, in terms of next steps, I was going to reach out to Mark and Shasta as PRAC leadership to discuss planning the annual meeting and getting an agenda set up within the next week or 2.
Great. So Todd, let's get a meeting set up between yourself, the co-chair, and myself, and we'll discuss how we can move forward if that's acceptable to Shasta. And then we will report out to the rest of the body and follow up. Shasta, is that okay with you?
Sounds great, except you just gave me a promotion. I'm vice chair, not co-chair.
Well, maybe I'm
Wishful thinking.
maybe I'm showing you my intentions for the future. In any event, folks, I appreciate all your time today. I think that we've concluded our business unless there are additional announcements. Yes, Scott, please.
Just real quick, the PrAC bylaw subcommittee meeting is going to be September 9th. We set that a while ago.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Scott. In the meantime, folks, Shasta, myself, and Todd will get together, report out next steps. I thank you for your time today. And Mr. Albert, congratulations. We're looking forward to your next term. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.